So welcome to the second evening of Screening Rights Film Festival. This is our 6th edition. We are a Midlands-based social justice film festival, and we're really delighted to be having Deepti Gupta's film, sorry Deepti, Shut Up Sona, playing this evening, and to have the panel. Before I hand over, I just want to thank our sponsors, specifically the Humanities Research Fund at the University of Warwick, but also the BFI Film Hub, the local BFI Film Hub that has also supported us this year, as has Coventry City of Culture. The festival is dedicated to exploring the relationship between film and social justice issues. And often this can mean watching films that are really rich in what they tell us about experiences of human atrocity and other such issues. But it was especially important this year that we included a film, at least one, that had both that social justice and important protest and activism element to it, but also provided us with a lot of pleasure too. So I'm delighted to hand over now to Monia Acciari, who will be chairing the session this evening, or interviewing Deepti Gupta. She's a specialist in contemporary Indian cinema at DeMontfort University. And she's also the co-director of the UK Asian Film Festival in Leicester. And I'm so delighted that she could join us this evening. So over to you, Monia.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. And I have to confess, I'm really excited about having this chat with Deepti tonight. I have, of course, watched the film, and I have so many questions, but of course I would not want to indulge, so I will have just a few questions just to kind of warm up a little bit, and then I'd love to hear from the audience as well. What we could do, of course, is to use the chat should you have any questions for Deepti, and or we would, given the circumstances, I'd say that I would love to hear your voices. So if you have any questions, we might would be lovely to actually hear from you as well. So before starting in asking questions to Deepti about the film, I just would like to say a couple of words about her. So Deepti is, she graduated from in cinematography from the Film and Television Institute in India. A fan of the place, I have to say that, and she's really very popular within the frame of filmmakers in India. She has been she's shot films like Honeymoon Travels, PVT Ltd, The Fakir of Venice, and then a series of documentaries that really established her, documentaries and commercials that have established her within the field. And then, of course, we have this 2019 first feature-length film, Shut Up Sona, which really picks up on several social, cultural, political problems that are still heavily present in India. And I like to start kind of unfolding a little bit on those problems. And very beautifully, Deepti kind of told us the story of Sona Mohapatra, which I'm really sorry she's not here because I'm a huge fan, I have to say. But Sona is an Indian singer. She's a music composer, a lyricist, and I've actually came to be familiar with her work a few years ago with the film in 2011, which was Delhi Belly, and her beautiful song Bedardi Raja is something that I keep still kind of, it's still there in the back of my mind sometimes. So Deepti, I would like to kind of start thinking, I would like to start really broadly about knowing a little bit about this film and about how this film came about. I'd like to know a bit about the ideas, the origins of the ideas of making this film.
Hi, thank you, Monia. It's lovely to be here with all of you. Yeah, to dive in straight into your question, Sona and I have been friends had been friends for 14 years when we started making this. And I mean, I kind of felt like in 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 our relationship, this film was nascent somewhere, because we were having a lot of experiences in our respective fields, which seemed like they were parallels of each other. She was, finding things in the music business, or a lack of equality, which I was finding in the film industry as a cinematographer. And often we were talking about it. I Actually, our relationship started with working together, where she asked me to direct one of her music videos uh, all that time ago, which I also shot. So that's how it started. And she wasn't such a big star back then, and our relationship began. But we always had the similar kind of love for everything Indian, Indian history or Indian poetry, and we had problems every with similar things. We were fighting the same battle, but in different ways. So there was this one point in our lives where we both felt in different ways like the walls are closing in on us. Like there's nowhere to go now. We have to figure out how to define ourselves. And there was this one time when we met, and Sona said, "Why don't we do something together?" And there was no plan of what to do. If I had to tell her, "Let's just make 9 music videos and stitch them together, and that's a film," she would have been, "Okay, whatever it is that you want to do." Because that's the kind of respect that we have for each other. Me as the kind of activist and musician that she is, I absolutely have loved her voice. It would often give me goosepimples when she sits in the same room and sings with me. And she has extended a similar love towards me as a filmmaker. So it was a kind of a mutual deep need to express something, because we felt like we were just coming to a dead end, and we had to just say it somehow. So it was cathartic for both of us.
Right. So it's like this kind of friendship and synergy brought you together to actually, voice out something that certainly is still very vivid and needs to be said, needs to be told. Yeah, no, absolutely understandable. Deepti, I would like to ask you also something about while making the film, right? Something about really what do you feel were the challenges, but also what was pleasurable in this project as it was happening?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, pretty much everything was pleasurable and challenging at the same time, but it was kind of more challenging and less pleasure in the beginning, and it became the opposite later on.
Right.
I mean, I think what was the pleasure was the simple thing that we started as two friends who wanted to share things that we each were going through but were never able to share it. Like I was always traveling the country, to very remote places, at a very, meeting people at the ground level. But where I felt like I would love it if she shares that with me, and she would take the stages and have this crowds full of audience, and I was never there, and she always felt like, "I wish we could share that." So because that was happening, that was lovely. But the challenges was something that I actually hadn't foreseen, because we are very close friends. So I never realized that in the beginning, when I would pick up the camera, and at this point in her life, Sona is already a celebrity. The moment the camera is on, she's a celebrity. So there was a certain state of being, or a certain posture, or certain controlling of a narrative that I had to somehow get past, and that took quite a lot of time.
Right.
To get down to the brass tacks of the intimacy back again, as if we are intimate, but now there's a camera present, but it's invisible.
Yeah.
That took a very long time, and there were times that I had to, even in the end, sometimes just mic up the place and tell the sound engineer, who was my only working crew, because I needed to keep the intimacy. I didn't want too many people around. I would tell him, just mic up and leave, hide in the bathroom or something.
Yes, I understand that,
Yeah.
which is very interesting because I have in the moment I have a question about this kind of intimacy that you talk about with but I have another question about how you work with the camera and really how you engage with the space with Sona as well, and it's very beautiful how the camera observes and in a way records the action happening in front of it in a very discreet way, if you want, in a very gentle way, if you like. But there are also instances where you kind of intervene, and you intervene in a more kind of distinctive way. And more directly, if you want. So I was wondering if that was a premeditated decision, or if it happened, or what was the kind of the rationale behind that.
See, the interventions were actually always happening, but maybe in the first half of the shoot, I was hoping to hide them in the sense that, in my head as a filmmaker, I thought, no, this should never be a part of the film. That's a part of the relationship. That's not part of the film. Because when I started, I felt like the relationship doesn't have to be part of the film. I was hell-bent on something being completely observational. But it was maybe quarter of the way into the shoot that I realized that that's not possible. That when someone is a celebrity and there's only very few people close to them, and I'm one of them, and I'm behind the camera, she has to talk to me. And in fact, this process of filmmaking cannot be observational, because there is a synergy of a shared experience, and it has to come in. But at the same time, I had a resolve about not saying too much, not knowing when to butt in and not, because that's always a tough decision. You don't want to change something, and at the same time you want to be able to experience it deeper, you want to be able to interject. So it was tough. There were even times that she would break down, and I would have these confusing moments that I would leave the camera rolling, let her cry for a bit, and then enter the frame and hug her and think, don't use that shot, don't use that shot. But you never know, right? So because the writing is actually going to happen on the table.
Yeah.
But I think luckily, because the edit of the film began before I was done with the shoot, and I still had maybe 20% of the shoot left to do, which also was the more potent part of the filming, because by then this whole presentation to camera had dropped. There was total intimacy. I was much more clued into what I needed in the narrative.
Yeah.
That those interjections were was more of what has remained in the film, because with just saying that much, one was able to say more. And sometimes it would even, I mean, some moments were just like you feel like there's some god of cinema or something, like when she's wearing the bracelet which is a handcuff.
Yeah.
It's like, how can this kind of stuff happen? But it does, and
Yes.
you can't plan it, but it just happens.
Yeah. It was very beautiful, and it was very you could really read actually this synergy between you both, and this very supportive, if you want me to call it that, supportive role that you had there. It was incredibly inspiring. So these interventions were absolutely lovely. And again, kind of to talk a little bit more about this intimacy that there was, if you want, there was an intimate tone, in fact, and at the same time, this intimate tone was meeting also bravery. I loved it. There was such a contrast when that was happening. And I was wondering, of course, the bravery was your bravery as well as Sona's bravery as well. How did you manage to find, how do you think if you think you found a kind of balance or a compromise between these two dimensions?
Between which two dimensions?
Between this kind of intimate tone and the bravery.
I guess that's kind of how the relationship is defined also, that we share that kind of fight, even though our expressions as artists are completely different. And that's what inspires me to be around her, because her protest is so vocal and mine is more quiet. Mine is more like you just burrow into your shell and you keep doing the little bit of digging, and that's your protest is through just your work, not by talking about it, or in fact, this is probably, I don't think that I've ever had this kind of a Q&A session. You're bringing out stuff that's never kind of, come out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that her bravery was very inspiring to me. And I think I also, what I would in fact fight with was, I felt the need to also take care of her as my friend in some ways, because in one way she's like a warrior, but in another way she's very vulnerable. And especially when I was filming sequences between her and her partner, her husband Ram, I was always split in two. One part was this filmmaker thinking, I've got it now I've got the film. And this another part as a friend thinking, but is this going to harm her? Is this going to make them uncomfortable? Does it, you also want to take care of her as a friend, but at the end of it, one has to be devoted to the work, to what you're trying to leave behind, because what you say is the exactly the kind of thing that we deal with as feminists, that you're fighting a fight outside the home, and in some ways the shadows of those fights are inside the home. Men or partners in our lives, however much they support women who are always making trouble or asking uncomfortable questions, there are shadows of patriarchy that we all carry, including the men and the women, all of us. There's this push and pull. So I don't know, but one thing that really inspires me about Sona is how she hits rock bottom and then she just rises back up. And somewhere the style and the energy of the film is also coming from loving that about her.
Yeah, I think there is well, you both are, certainly she comes across to me as a fearless Sona, I would call it like that, if you don't mind. But at the same time, I feel that, of course, you are a different voice, right? That is kind of trying to raise those kind of issues within society, and you do it in. Well, there are two different styles that are being really married, if you want, in something that is very, very beautiful and inspiring. You both have at heart the kind of the women within your society, but also women artists in your society, and you kind of celebrate those figures by saying, "Hey, this is what's happening here, and this is what the kind of challenges that we have." I would like to ask you, Deepti, a bit more about your view. What you think about, what you think are still the kind of challenges that women filmmakers find still in India today?
That in a strange way, that becomes a very subjective question, because when it comes to the documentary world, it's one kind of challenges. To the Bollywood world, it's a whole different kind of challenges. I mean, I suppose for the documentary world, the largest challenge remains that there is no financing for documentary in our country.
Right.
And therefore no viewership. I guess it feeds off each other. So that's a very sad thing. But on top of that, it's not very often that women's stories, come to light. And at least in the last few years, that's something to celebrate about, that there's a lot of women's stories. Yeah. But actually, for me, in many ways, the film is addressing what things are like for women in the country, and Sona kind of symbolizes that. Because the atmosphere is the same, the challenges are the same. There is this hundreds of years of of viewpoint of women, of a kind of twisting of ancient poetry and ancient history to make women seem a certain way, or gender seem a certain way, even though maybe more than 1,000 years ago things were much more open, but they aren't anymore. So
it is. I was wondering if you have a sense of, you can give us a sense about how women kind of navigate the world of filmmaking today in, say, for instance, in popular Hindi cinema, so in Bollywood cinema and in regional cinemas. If you see some kind of disparities, or you see some kind of different struggles, for instance?
See, in Bollywood, if you just study who are the big directors, the women, and they are very, very talented, but they're also fairly connected to the film industry to begin with, a lot of them. Not all of them, but many of them. But in regional cinema, that's not always the case at all. Because budgets are smaller, you have more freedom to, say what you want. The language of cinema can be more, experimental. It doesn't have to be, there isn't such a lot of money being poured into it. But I do think things are changing. I do know a lot of, amazing women directors are there right now who are not, Bollywood has been known to be a very, I don't know what's the word for it, family driven by a few families.
Yeah, yes.
But things are changing now. There's a lot of really amazing films that have been made recently, which are women's narratives, and they're made by women, and they're amazing.
That's, I mean, it's great. It is actually great to, to know a bit more, especially from you, that you are within the field and you are able to observe how those changes in women making films is actually happening, is actually occurring, which is very encouraging.
In fact, one of our most amazing directors makes fiction in an animation format, Gitanjali Rao. So it's incredible right now. I feel so far it's the best time.
That's great. I mean, it's really great to know. I mean, I'm so looking forward to see so many more films by women from India, because because I think they need to be celebrated, certainly, and they need to find that kind of equality, if you want, within society. And I'm using the word equality on purpose, because I have a question that was there in the back of my mind, because I loved your film, and at the same time, last year I watched Martyrs of Marriage, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Martyrs of Marriage is a documentary, again, on the misuse of the section 498A of the Indian Constitution, and essentially is kind of the law in favor of women and the Dowry and so on. And it was incredibly disturbing the way this law was misused, and how many men have actually been affected by how this law is being used. So I was really trying to reflect and think about your film and what it is trying to do, as well as Martyrs of Marriage, and how they are, of course, working on different levels, but both are working to kind of bring some insight into gender inequalities in kind of both sides, if you want. My question is, so on one side we have women that are somehow empowered in a way by misusing the law, and by the law I was mentioning before in Martyrs of Marriage, while on the other side they are condemning femininity. So I was wondering, how do you think then your film is actually making an intervention into this debate, into the debate of gender equality?
Unfortunately, I haven't seen the film that you mentioned. I wish I had. If I had time before that, I would have.
Okay.
So so I haven't seen it, which is very unfortunate. But
it's a lovely documentary, because it's again, it's disturbing at times, because there are true stories, of course, about the misuse of this section of the penal code, and how many women have been kind of abusing of this code, and of course, on the other side, we have men that have been suffering a lot of kind of injustice, and of course, there is again this issue of gender inequality that comes up, or abuse of laws and so on. So that's why I thought, I'm watching your film. I'm thinking, how can we situate this film, your film, within the broad, debate of gender inequality, and how does it operate that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would love to have a more detailed conversation with you about this once I see that film. But aside from that, the way Indian law works, it's it's really strange that, like, for example, about a year and a half ago, there was one of the laws that changed, was that extramarital affairs are not illegal anymore. Okay, that was the law. That was what they changed it to. But the headlines in the paper said women are not a property of men anymore, because that's what it amounts to.
Yeah.
So it's crazy that there are different kind of freedoms that can be hidden for women and laws that have to change.
Yes.
Because that's what it was before.
Yeah, I think it's exactly this point of different freedoms and how those freedoms are either reinterpreted, redressed, reassessed, and used and misused within society. That those two films, or your film, is taking it to account again. Which is very interesting, and I'd love to talk more about the comparison of these two, because it's really,
Yes.
it is really really engaging. Deepti, I have a final question, and then I love to open the questions from the audience as well, because as I said, I would go on for the evening, but I love to hear from everyone. But my question is about the political scene, and very kind of broadly, if you can and if you want, I like to understand how do you think the different political scene in India have affected the flourishing of female artists today?
Okay, that's a question that Sona and I may have answered very differently, so that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Because she's very open-minded about politics, the way it is right now, where I don't really find it so. I feel like things are just getting worse. People are being penalized, journalists, artists, all kinds of people. So no, I don't think it's getting better at all. So yeah, one is proud of protests like Shaheen Bagh, which was a women's led protest, But yeah, I don't think things are any better at all. It makes one very uncomfortable to be in this country right now. And in another time, I would have thought a film like this would be no problem for anyone. It's a fun film. Okay, fine, it has politics, but come on, it's not, hitting you on the head with it. But
F you.
but I mean, that's what I would have thought. It's a mix, there's enough sugar coating. But the censor board didn't give us a censor certificate off the bat the first time. It had to be taken to the censor board the second time. And when I walked into the theater screening, because one has to listen to what they have to say, there was hushed silence. They wouldn't even say why. I tried to ask them, why aren't you giving it a certificate? What's the problem? At least tell me. I would like to know. It was just like they cannot open their mouths. So, we had to reapply. And this time, luckily, there was a well-known actress who was heading the committee the next time round. And she said, this film needs to get a certificate without a single cut. But, if you can accept an adult certificate. I don't know what is adult about the film, but it was the only way that she had of handling that committee of 5 people to kind of placate them and say, just let this go.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting how this comes, when this is the case. This is one of the many cases that are actually that have actually
and
had the same thing.
Also, while the film was at Rotterdam, one of India's biggest documentary film festival was taking place in Bombay. And the film was not selected for it. And a lot of filmmakers were protesting about why their films weren't part of the festival, which we couldn't engage with. We weren't here anyway. But, and also I think somewhere I thought, well, it is a subjective decision for a programmer, right? I mean, because amongst them was Anand Patwardhan's film, that's as political as it gets,
Right. So, well, but many festivals kind of are, support kind of different type of infrastructure. Let's put it like that. But again, this goes with the further conversation about it.
But the fact is, it wasn't selected. So that's that's the political scenario right now.
Yeah. That's very disturbing and alarming as well.
Yeah.
And I would kind of, rest my cause at the moment. And I'd love to actually hear from the audience if you have any questions.
But just to wrap this up, I also have to say that when these things happen, not being taken in a festival, not getting a census certificate, I would tell Sona, it's not for a joke that we've called our film Shut Up Sona. It's well deserved, the name.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, makes sense, definitely. Absolutely. Yes, so if you're happy, Deepti, to take some questions from the audience, I'd love to hear
Absolutely.
opinions.
I would love to hear also.
Please, otherwise, that's going to be me, and it's no all evening, it's not really safe. So please, if you have any questions, I'm happy to either read them for you, or we would really love to hear your voice.
Yes, that'll be lovely.
Yes, that would be really great. Any questions, anyone? Don't be shy. Yes, we are advised to say that. Don't be shy. It's really a very, very lovely conversation with Deepti, who is very kind in the middle of the night.
The session needs to end with "Shut up, Deepti."
Yeah.
Hi. I loved watching your documentary. It was so inspiring, and the way that you portrayed Sona to be, a very powerful woman and fighting for what she believes in is awesome, because I feel like in the music industry and in the film industry, being a woman artist and a woman filmmaker, it is you get a lot of struggles, and you get a lot of male people not taking you seriously for your work. So as a woman filmmaker yourself, how do you kind of how have you moved past people not taking you seriously because either you're a woman or you're a woman of color? Hi.
Hi, Shaina.
Hello, Shania, nice to meet you.
Okay, so I mean, I don't have a 100% straight answer, but okay. So the thing is, as a cinematographer, my journey has been, without my wanting it to be, very much about gender, because I studied at a film school, and when I came out, top of my class, I thought it's going to be easy now, I've topped the class. What more can it take? I believe in myself. I'm confident. I'm talented. What more can it take? It wasn't like that at all. Because the first thing people saw about me was not my work, it was my gender. And it wasn't something that I was prepared for at all. I wasn't prepared that, I didn't have any female predecessors, except one who had worked many years before me. It just, so it was like you have to break these walls all over again. So I don't find that so different in cinematography, even now. There's in the Indian Women Cinematographers Collective, which I'm the co-founder of, there's 90 women DPs, and there's only a handful of them, you can count them on one hand, who work in the mainstream film industry. So it's not, the same at all. But as a filmmaker, my journey has been, with this film, has been cathartic. Everything that you think of as a creative person thinking, this is a wall, I don't know how to break it, I just learned to see it as, don't look at the cloud, look at the silver lining. What can you do about it? Because you can't change the way the world is.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to find your voice. I feel the way Sona has her voice with her singing and with her mic, that's me with the camera. All of us have to just, that's the only way out. There is no other way out, I feel. So yeah, I don't know if there's place for women filmmakers, but I just don't, I've dwelled on that as a DP for 15 years, and I don't feel the need to dwell on it as a filmmaker, because you just have to do it. If it has to find a place, it will.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you.
That's
very
lovely.
Motivating,
Deepti, I think I had someone that was there. I had someone called Rory, I think, coming to ask you a question, if I'm not wrong. If I'm Perfect. Hi.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, sort of, I noted at the end and kind of throughout this discussion, you've referred to yourself as a director of photography as opposed to a director, and I was wondering whether or not that's sort of just how you view yourself in your career, or whether or not that has any other full attachments to it.
Actually, at the top of the film, it says a film by Deepti Gupta at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
So it was just that I didn't want to repeat it. That's all it was.
Okay, very simple answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have Jules.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I noticed acutely that there was a very different feel to the film during the everyday sequences of Sona's life. And then again, the offstage practicing and recording sequences and the onstage performance sequences. I mean, there were really three different, very different feels to those three different aspects of her life. Through the camera style, through the editing, could you discuss your process on that?
Okay, I feel, I mean, I sometimes, I mean, this, I don't know if some of it was decided while I was filming. I think after 20 years of being a DP, it's more a process of looking at your work and saying, oh yeah, I was doing things differently for different things, because that's how it's coming out intuitively. But I do know that in the more intimate scenes, I, for example, knew that I should be handheld more often than not, you know, because it's much more immersive that way. And I feel like I'm with her and I can flow with her any way I want. But in her stage sequences, I felt like I'm a little outside of her and I can observe her as a star, which is what I wanted to do. Even as a friend, I think it was just a very, very intuitive process, actually. But I do feel that in documentary cinematography, especially because I feel all my fiction work also got enriched by documentary cinematography when I was shooting for other people, your politics becomes a part of your gaze. And it's not always that I'm aware of it, but when I see a frame, like I've been asked in film festivals, why did you frame Ram and Sona like that across the table? And while I was doing it, I didn't know. But when I look at it, it's an obvious choice of, you know, seeing them as a little adversarial, keeping the camera low because you don't want her to look, you know, dainty or something like that. Because for me, she is empowered. And it is something that she usually takes offense to, saying, why do you keep shooting me below the chin? You know, you don't make me look glamorous. And I would keep telling her, it's not my job in this film to make you look glamorous. I've done that in the music videos. That's done. So, yeah, I think it was an intuitive thing, but I do know that it's a mix of observation and an intimacy where I'm part of what is happening in her life. Something like that.
And by the way, the display of her performances, the way that you shot her performances, was as dynamic as I've ever seen performance videos being done. It was really excellent.
Oh wow! Thank you for saying that. I must tell Sona that, because yeah, she often feels like in Hindi they say "tu" for someone very intimate with you. He says, you're always just making me look raw and, you know, just where's the glamour? You haven't made me look like a star enough.
You certainly you've got the glamour into the performance video.
Thank you. Some of that is from her old performances, but yeah, I've kind of energized it to match her, to match the energy that she carries for me, I guess. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you for a lovely documentary.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I take Rachel's question?
Thank you, Monia. Deepti, first of all, what a wonderful film. Thank you very much for sharing it with us and being here with us this evening. I've only seen the film once, so this comment is coming just from a single viewing. But I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about how you balance the differently gendered voices in the film, because there was one particular scene which I found very emotive and powerful, which was the scene in the shrine where Sona sings. Yeah. And I was really interested to hear a little bit more about how that came about and and then how you balanced it in terms of, I mean, I just put out there, so Ram's voice disappears for me towards the end of the movie in a really interesting way, and I just wanted to hear you talk a little bit more about the voices in the movie.
Ram's voice, you mean her, you're referring to her partner, right? Okay. Yeah, so did you say different gendered voices, or did I hear wrong? Different gendered voices. Okay. So actually, for me, you know, I wasn't seeing the film purely as a biopic, frankly, or as a music documentary only, or as an activist film only. For me, it was like a confluence of a lot of things that I was feeling. And I felt like, you know, one can make a feminist film and it can be about, you know, wanting to have an equal space and all that. But that's one thing. The fact is there's many types of people who are being othered in India. You know, there's Muslim people who are being othered all the time. There's the LGBTQ community. And I felt like it was important to make it, you know, give some kind of an indication of, it's not just women, it's everybody, you know, and it's the whole rewriting of this whole history, which is a problem actually, because the way the dancer is saying the so-called male and female, or the way in the shrine scene, you know, there's these men who aren't used to a woman singing in front of them. You know, she's being told, do not sing there, you cannot sing there. But when she does, it's a moment of grace. She's in tears, he's completely moved, you know. So I guess it was in those uncomfortable moments that for me everything just came alive. And so much of it was just about sharing a journey with Sona actually, because that shrine is a place that I have frequented forever as a child. And it's a place where one of the mystics who she sings is buried. And I thought it would be a great idea for us to both go there and to experience something. And we knew this will happen. She'll be told not to sing, but we didn't know what's going to happen after that. You know, it was possible that she would be in her Chandi avatar and say, I will sing like a fighter, but she didn't. There was something so gentle about what happened.
And that was really beautiful to me. In a way, that scene is emblematic of the complexities that come throughout the film. And it kind of spoke all of those things. I won't take up any more time, but thank you very much.
Yeah. I just want to add something to what Rachel says, which is very beautiful. In fact, I took a note because it was very beautiful, but there is that mystical way that comes across, and that the character there says, very beautiful when he says, they sing, of course, and that is all very poetic, but then at some points he says, the poets express themselves in the feminine. And I think that that's, you know, when I was talking before about, or asking before about this gender imbalance and so on, I think that kind of was kind of a revelation, right? It was bringing everything into harmony in a way.
Yes.
And throughout the film, I find that there is a kind of a rewriting, if you want, of reassessment of poets, for instance, or scriptures, if you want, as well. And they are revamped, okay, reinterpreted. How do you think the film has been trying to rebalance, you know, tradition and modernity?
You know, I feel in all of us, in people like Sona and me, tradition and modernity just go hand in hand. You know, we are that part of India which is actually like, you know, this, for example, the music that Sona has learned is ancient music. It's hundreds of years old, what she's trained in. But now she sings on stages and she's a pop star. You know, Indians are quite a crazy mix of what is ancient and what is modern. And we haven't, it's such an everyday thing for us. I don't know what to say, you know. And it plays out in family values, and I see it playing out at the table when Ram is telling her, when she says, this is the purpose of my life, and he says, no, it's not. You know, to me, it's baffling to still be sitting on the table when that is said to you. But those are the kind of, you know, cracks that exist in our society that, you know, we negotiate a lot of, yeah, we negotiate a lot of nonsense, but sometimes we do it with grace, I guess. Yeah, but Rachel, for the second question where you said, well, Ram exits the film, it is true. I felt that that is something that also happened on the at the edit table, because, but it's actually kind of an illustration of a deeper truth and not the reality of the situation, because obviously he hasn't exited her life and or something. But in a symbolic way, it's like he exits and I make an entry with this sisterhood concept, you know, of that's like a way of saying we'll do it ourselves. It's okay. Don't let anyone support us. Who cares?
That's what it felt like to me. I thought that was an incredibly powerful shift in the discourse in the film. And although it was very, very subtle, but incredibly powerful.
Yeah, for this, for all of the, I mean, you know, it was a very complex film to edit, but if I didn't have the editor who I had, who is this amazing feminist musician himself, it was quite a ride to work with him and to keep fine-tuning the politics of everything, you know, because the pace of the film is breakneck.
Deepti, I think we have another question.
Hi, Deepti. I wanted you to tell us something about the audience reaction in India. I was wondering, for example, do some people in India who watch it, do they agree that she should shut up and that she's blasphemous, or are people mostly supportive and love her? Thank you.
Okay, I have to say that the reaction to the film is sometimes very different from the reaction to Sona on social media. It's on social media that she gets told to shut up very often. And I feel the film was important for me because it was my way of telling people, don't tell her to shut up, listen to this woman. Everyone's always telling her, your voice is so great. Why do you have to talk about everything? Just shut up and sing. But for me, it was about, no, you shut up and listen to her. Which is also why those kind of musical cuts exist in the film, and you know, but the cinema viewing in Bombay was a houseful screening of I think an 800 people cinema. People were laughing their guts out most of the time, and for me, very importantly, in some of the places where for me the humor and the politics was sharp, you know, which had been questioned a little bit by some people before that, but just to see audience reaction. For example, the Roger Federer sequence. I had been told by some people, stick it out. That's not about the music industry. And sometimes I would say, but the film is not just about the music industry. You know, how do you make it universal? You know, it is a universal narrative for me. And so it was, audience reaction was amazing. And often in the Q&A, very few people would be crying, which was lovely. But through the film, people were laughing. So it was crazy. They were just laughing. It's the audience reaction in Bombay and in Rotterdam, and strangely has been exactly the same. You know, in different places. In Sweden, in Gothenburg, which was shocking to me. In Gothenburg, I was even asking the audience, why are you crying? This is the high, you know, this is what is equality. This is what we see in India as, you know, this society, they've done it all. So, you know, you don't have a problem. Why are you so moved? But a lot of women felt like, no, in different nuanced ways, things are a little bit similar. That was somewhat a surprise.
I mean, yes, I mean, the film touches upon themes that are so universal, Deepti, which clearly I'm not surprised about, you know, a sense of womanhood or sisterhood, if you want to call it like that, that kind of supports what the values and the views that the film is actually portraying. So yeah, that's pretty great. Do we have any other questions for Deepti?
It's so lovely to listen to everyone, actually.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And one is starved of it, having missed hot dogs in Sheffield and, you know, no interaction with people who've seen the film.
Wow. So yes, I think I don't have anything on the chat. So if Oh, Jules, yes, yeah, sorry.
Actually, I do have one more question. In Sona's repertoire, how much of what she sings are traditional songs and how much are newly created?
Oh, you've got a very important thing, actually. Okay, so the stuff that she's known for as a star, or has been also not just the traditional stuff, but what's featured more in the film is what draws from the traditional music, and some of it that she hadn't taken to stage, or she had started taking to stage during the film. And it's more the music that she's learned in her childhood, 500-600-year-old songs based on Indian classical music. But I felt that not only it's her raw voice that gives me more goose pimples than anything else. That was one part of it. And another was, of course, the politics of those songs. When she sings Meera, and just after her husband has said to her, she says to the husband, for example, that, in Hinduism, he says in Hinduism, gods and goddesses are equal. And she says, no, only a consort. And then she sits there uncomfortably holding her silence. It has to cut to that Meera song, with Meera singing, with Meera's voice 600 years ago saying, Krishna, I'm at your feet, I'm your slave, or something like that. It's all coded in the music that we have in this land. And it's been twisted around, because Meera as a mystic actually was writing this poetry to express lust sometimes even, but that's not what anybody talks about anymore. Yeah. So I love the ancient music that she sings, actually, and her voice is it can hypnotize you.
Beautiful modulation.
It's beautiful, actually. As a fan, I can say I enjoy her so much. So yeah. I'm so sorry she wasn't here tonight. I would have, pushed her. Hey, come on, give us something tonight. So we try our best, but hopefully we'll have another opportunity to actually have her around. So if you don't have any other question, I have a very final question, just because I want to kind of push a bit the boundaries and tap into the film. But there is a question that actually I think Ram asked to Sona at some point, and that is, what is liberal today in India? My question for you, just to wrap up, is what is liberal in arts today in India?
That's tough. I think saying anything openly has become liberal, because saying anything is difficult now. It's now more than ever before, there is a lot of fear of speaking one's opinion. People are, it seems to be that the powerful, the governance in our country seems to be after anyone who doesn't toe the line.
Can we say that to be liberal is to be brave?
Yeah, I guess so. Is not to shut up, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Deepti. That was it was really lovely talking to you, and having all of them here and kind of interacting with us was really
thank
lovely.
you everyone for staying for so long. I'm just amazed that everyone stayed for so long after a long film. This is really incredible.
Thank you, Deepti. Fantastic to have you here.
And thank you so much to Monia for hosting the panel, for doing such a great job.
Yes,
and
wonderful.
To Deepti. The thing that's so hard about being online is that if we were in an auditorium, we would have been clapping the film, we would have been clapping this panel, and you would feel the love. So I think it's a great place to end this event, with this sort of vote for not shutting up, and yet it's also, of course, ironic because we're closing the event. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a wonderful session. We still have 4 fantastic films and events coming in the next 2 days, and I hope some of you, all of you, more of you will join us for those. Thank you again, and good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having this film. Thank you everyone for watching it, and thank you, Monia, for your questions, which made me really dig in and go back in a time and, you know, you have to
I'll have
look
more, don't worry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.